Scary Monster Tales Audio, Volume 1. First of an ongoing series of monster tales told in the rain. I've lowered the super loud noises so that you can use this as a sleep stories collection if you'd like, but I've got some neat Dogman and Cryptid moving illustrations in case you're not ready to close your eyes just yet. In this first volume, we've got 3 kinds of Pennsylvania cryptids that you might not have ever heard of before. But we're starting it off with a creature that you're probably quite familiar with. I saw a quadrupedal dogman interact with a bipedal one. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I have led a pretty boring life. I never had anything outrageous happen to me. The only celebrity I ever saw was Al Roker. Like I said, it's been a boring life. But I've got one story to tell, because I've had one single interesting thing happen to me. The thing is, that one story I've got to tell is so over the top that now when I finally have a good anecdote to share, hardly anyone even believes what I'm telling them. I'll give you your chance to scoff at me next, because I once had a cryptid sighting. In fact, I had 2 cryptid sightings, and it was just about the strangest day of my life. I was in West Leechburg with a friend of mine who lived over there. It was autumn and there were dead leaves on the ground that crunched when you walked on them. We were strolling down this tree-lined street that I think was Gyron Street or Gyron Street. Then we saw what we thought was a bear approaching. My buddy signaled for me to be quiet, and he started climbing up this really good climbing tree. I joined him, and soon we were watching the action from the bird's eye view. When it came closer to us, that big bear, walking down on all 4s, seemed kind of strange looking to me. My friend leaned over and whispered, "That's a dog. It's a giant dog." I couldn't really argue the point either. It looked like an oversized canine to me too. And that is when the most incredible moment of my life happened. Bursting out of the woods, making a racket, crunching leaves, and almost walking into that big bear-like canine was an upright walking werewolf-type creature. It seemed like a dog, but it seemed like a man too. And when it saw the other dogman over there, down on all 4s, it did a pretty interesting thing, I think. The upright one held his hand out, with his wrist limp, so as not to stress out the other large canine. It was just the way I've seen people approach cats or dogs that they don't know yet, holding out their hand so that the animal can smell them and tell some things about them right off the bat. Anyway, the big dogman down on all 4s really couldn't have cared less that the bipedal dogman was up and walking around. As long as he kept out of the big guy's way, then that seemed to be all that mattered to him. And so, both sides satisfied, they each continued on in the direction they had been going. There was to be no turf war on that day. I guess the upright one offering his paw to smell was an act of submission to the big one down on all 4s. Although that was the larger animal of the 2 of them, I would have to say it was also much, much older than the upright one. It wasn't clear to me which of the 2 of them might have won if the fight had come to blows. But it didn't, and my friend and I got to witness an actual peaceful interaction between 2 legendary, man-eating, cryptid carnivores. And from now to the day I leave this plane of existence, I can lay claim to the fact that I saw a quadrupedal dogman interact with a bipedal one. The 4-footed monkey dog. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got some good news for you. I have seen a new kind of an animal. At least I think it's new, to the human race, or at least the race of those of us who live in Pennsylvania. It is possible that this is an out-of-place exotic creature, and so I'm going to describe for you the 2 times I caught brief but convincing glimpses of this thing. Both happened on Furnace Road, which is gorgeous during the day, but can give off a sort of a creepy vibe at night. I usually have to drive that road at night, when I drive it at all, and both of my sightings happened after dark. Since they were both pretty similar experiences, I should probably just combine the details to shorten how long it takes to tell. In both cases, the creature ran out onto the road, alarming me, because its movements to me resembled those of a kind of a giant rat. It didn't walk, it scurried into the middle of the road, saw my car coming, then he scurried back to the side of the road. Once back on the side, though, he stood up taller, and I guess he was about the size of a medium dog. He wasn't a dog, though. He was sort of like this mini gorilla in some ways, but he was 4-legged, and he seemed to have paws, not hands, you know. His back end was lower than his front. His back legs much shorter than his front legs too. But they still look like legs in the front, not arms as they appear to be on a gorilla. And that was another thing. It didn't have ears like a gorilla either. It had ears that to me looked like they belonged on a cat, I guess. Maybe a wolf? But they were triangular cat ears on top of this little monkey-faced dog. And he seems to live up there by Furnace Road, if you ask me. Of course, I haven't seen him in about a month, so he might not be there any longer. I wonder if he was some kind of escaped zoo animal, or if he has a family of other creatures like him living around there. In either case, I hope he finds his way back to wherever he's supposed to be. And if he's really supposed to be in the woods along Furnace Road, in the hills of Pennsylvania, then I sure hope some other people start seeing him. I sure as heck don't want to be the only person in the world who ever saw the 4-footed monkey dog of McVaytown, Pennsylvania. The Hell's Hollow Hellcat or Howler. Dear Scary Stories NYC. There's a park in Portersville called Hell's Hollow that's really more like heaven on earth, if you ask me. It's got a nice hiking trail and a gorgeous waterfall. There are 2 different occasions in which I was alone in that natural area, and I witnessed what I'm going to call the Catman. The second time, I think he witnessed me right back. What is the Pennsylvania Catman? I don't know, really, as I haven't found anyone else besides me who's even seen it yet. I also like to call it the Hell's Hollow Hellcat, or maybe the Hell's Hollow Howler. That sounds pretty good. I did sort of hear it howl once, so there's that. The first time I saw him, I was sitting under the falls, but off in the woods a bit. I like to sit where people are unlikely to accidentally trip over me if they're hiking on or near the trail. I try to find spots where people won't even notice me, or even where animals won't notice me for that matter. If you sit still enough in nature, sometimes wild birds will come right up to you unafraid. And while I was enjoying this quiet time, I heard that cat howling or yowling that I mentioned earlier. It sounded like a cat that was extremely upset and angry, and I looked up to see if I could understand what was happening. There, above the falls, there was a big cat tumbling down the tree-covered hill, leading down to the water and the falls. It was trying to arrest its drop but failing, hence the terrible racket it was raising, not to mention a big cloud of dust as it rolled and fell. Eventually it splashed into the water and went over the falls, then waded to the shore on the far side from me, drying itself in the sun and licking its wounds. I held as still as I could, not daring to leave the scene until the cat had finished its grooming. I got a pretty good look at that beast, and it was not your ordinary bobcat. This was a kind of a Catman. It stood on its hind legs, except when a sound in the woods would frighten it. Then, it would drop to all fours and prepare to run if it needed to. But the rest of the time it seemed to prefer standing upright, like a human being. It was a very beautiful animal. I'd even call it cute. But that was clearly something that could turn into a man-eater if it needed to. I mean, it was a little bit smaller than I am, but I don't have claws and teeth like that thing. And I got the impression it was probably much stronger than a grown man as well. No, believe me, I kept my head low, and I breathed in a shallow manner until that creature was up and out of there. Now, the second time I saw a cryptid Catman at Hell's Hollow, I was hanging out by that stream over there, which tends to usually be a quieter location to chill and hang. And it was on that day as well, until I heard a splashing sound coming from further down the stream. Once again, I was doing my thing of hanging out in the bushes so that I would be out of the way and not very noticeable to people passing by. When I craned my neck to see who was coming downstream, though, my eyes did not fall on a human being. They fell on that Catman again, and I remember pulling my sneakers up under that bush to make certain that I was hidden. From what I could make out, the Catman was chasing what I at first thought might be a fish. Later, I saw that it was something white and furry, like either a small rabbit or a very large rodent of some other sort. The prey was splashing into and out of the water, while the Catman was attempting to bounce back and forth on little outcroppings of rock or land or tree roots and avoid getting himself all wet. When the two of them got to almost underneath the spot I was hiding in, the small white thing ran up onto the land and in the direction away from me. The Catman hopped in that same direction and appeared poised to resume his chase of the smaller prey into the woods. But then he stopped short, facing away from me, and stood perfectly still on his hind cat feet. Somehow I knew this meant he had sensed my presence, and I scooted back a few inches into a darker spot. Time froze, and I swear I could hear a very, very deep growling coming from down there. I wanted to cry. I wanted to go to the bathroom, but mostly I wanted that Catman to go away. Instead, Hell's Hole Howler turned around and faced directly toward the bush that I was hiding behind. My body must have thought that was the end of Act 3, because I evacuated, and tears began involuntarily leaking from my eyes and down my cheeks. That Catman knew where I was, and I had a lot more meat on me than that little white furball it was chasing. Would it give up that chase and come for me? I waited to see what would happen, shaking all over, and too frightened to make any move at all. When that beast finally trotted off after the other prey, I laid down on the ground and I passed out. I slept a couple of hours before I could deal with being conscious again. Now, I am not going to suggest that anyone go looking for this thing, because it could really rip you to shreds without even trying. But I sure do wish that I wasn't the only one who had seen the Hell's Hollow Hellcat. The Black Beast of Bucktown PA. Dear Scary Stories NYC. My girlfriend and I recently had a cryptid sighting when we were someplace we weren't supposed to be, doing something we weren't supposed to be doing. We got a picture of the monsters, but we can't post it on our social because then we would have to explain to our parents why we were in the woods behind the Harris Hill Brewing Company in Bucktown. Or actually, my girlfriend is correcting me. It seems the beer cafe is technically in Pottstown, PA, but it is located a few blocks from Bucktown, only a minute's drive away. I'm glad I didn't know when I named the monster, though, since I think Beast of Bucktown sounds badass. And I can't think of any scary names at all for this creature that start with a P. So I guess you can probably already figure out the story before I even tell it. We went to the Brew Cafe, then we walked out back to the parking lot, but instead of getting in the car, we just kept on walking into those woods so that we could have a little private time away from prying eyes. The thing is, just as you would expect in a story with a title like this one has, we both soon had that feeling that we were being watched. And of course, in a story like this, that feeling always turns out to be justified. We kept stopping what we were doing to go look around, which is something we had never done before. Usually, we don't even care that much if people want to gawk. I mean, one day we'll be old, and then nobody will want to look anymore, right? So whatever. But that night, it really bugged me, and I could tell it was bothering my girl even worse. So we decided this was pointless, and we started walking back to the car. And that's when we saw them. There were 2 of them, which I guess the title doesn't really let you know about in advance. Feel free to change that, make it plural, because there were 2 of them, and one of them looked right at the camera when I took the photo I sent you. I mean, I'd already be viral with that image, if it didn't mean I'd get my girlfriend in trouble with her folks, you know. I thought one of the creatures had horns on his head, the one on the right, but it was just the way the wind was blowing his long fur around. As you can see, the creatures had chimpanzee-like faces, but the ears were on top of their heads like dogs or bears. The ears were round, like bear ears, but seemed bare in the other way, the B-A-R-E way, as in not covered in fur. It's an interesting combination of features. And of course the eyes were so bright. They seemed to have made the rest of the photo look darker. I don't actually remember it being that dark there. Anyway, I didn't get a chance to snap a second picture, because those 2 things both made a loud squeal, like pigs or boars, and then they charged toward us. One of them leaped on my back and started pulling my hair out of the back of my head. I ran backward into the car, and he fell off my back. My girl drove me to see the doctor, but I only had surface wounds. Those creatures were nasty, and I'm just glad that my girlfriend runs so much faster than me. She was able to get in the car and get it started, while I was doing the monkey dog monster ballet. These creatures are not man-sized, but they are very strong, and their claws are sharp. I got my wounds cleaned pretty quickly, and there was no infection, so the animal doesn't use poison or anything of that nature. I don't think they had thumbs, although they tended to attack me from behind, so I couldn't always tell what was happening. Those claws felt like they must have been as long as badger claws. Just deadly long. I wonder if the 2 I saw were mates, and I wonder where they came from. That's not exactly a nature preserve, it's just a small grove of woods. The Coventry Woods Preserve is a few miles to the north, though. It's a 4-minute drive max, and it's a drive through the country to get there. So my guess is that these 2 painful lovebirds came from up there somewhere. That was why me and my friend I'll call Harry wanted to drive up Chestnut Hill Road toward that woods preserve, and we wanted to do it at night. With the eye shine those little monsters give off, I figured we'd be able to see them in the dark, as long as I kept my headlights on to give them some light to reflect back at us from the shadows. As soon as we got near the place, both my girl and Harry's started to freak out, and they said they wanted to bail on this mission. We calmed them down and told them it was just going to take 3 minutes, and I really wanted to get a second photo of those creatures. We were driving really slowly, looking back and forth in the night, when all of a sudden, this round object about as big as a human head comes careening out from between 2 trees, and both the girls scream. That made me and Harry scream too. And soon, all 4 of us were screaming, when a kid came out from between some trees and picked up his soccer ball, which is what it was. He looked at the 4 of us like we had lost our minds. We had gotten ourselves that worked up, and we were still driving through the residential area outside of the natural one. There was no way the ladies were going to allow us to do anything but turn around and go home. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad of it. I mean, if a soccer ball can get us that scared, imagine if we really had run into those two badger-clawed, monkey-faced dogmen again. This episode brought to you by our new line of Scary Stories t-shirts. Catman, the Beast of Bucktown, Monkey Dog, and Dogman. Use discount code YTShopping25 for a full 25% off. And now this. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.